Dr. Rob, we're going to dive right in, right? Because if we talk
last time we didn't dive.
Yeah,
right.
if we talk longer than
need
10
to
seconds,
dive
we're going to get cut off anyway because New Yorkers just interrupt us and do whatever they have to do. By popular demand, and he asked to be back on the podcast, which is super cool. One of the smartest and quite possibly richest men that we know, Joe Moglia, is in the studio again. Hello, Coach.
Hello, guys. It's great to be here. It really is a big deal. It's an honor. And by the way, this is last time I was on. This is different music than the last time. So clearly, the Fred Pets, whoever your sponsor is stepping up.
BetFred. Yeah, we have a sports book because sports gambling is big now, and they love to sponsor sports podcasts, and we love to bet on sports these days.
I have no doubt.
The last time you were here, our studio's changed quite a bit, and you notice that we've had some memorabilia up. We are lacking some Chanticleer stuff in here. We need to get some Coastal Carolina gear in the studio.
Travis, you move me. I guarantee you we'll get you something. In fact, we might even get you a real Chanticleer. He can fool around with Hank. 155-pound dog.
Joe's referring to my dog Hank, who's a 155-pound Great Pyrenees and Old English Sheepdog. But what brings you back? I know you come back and forth. You're probably in Omaha more than I even know. But what brings you back this time?
Well, no, I think really I've spent a really critical part of my life here. I really do truly love here. Now, I was born and raised in New York City. When I went to Wall Street, I went back to New York City. I've got media relationships. I got business relationships. I got all family there. So that's genuinely my home. But I feel incredibly strongly about Omaha, and I think I've got great friends that are going to last a lifetime. I still do some of my medical stuff here, and when I come in town, there's an opportunity for me to be on this podcast. I mean, why would I not come here? I should be coming here more often.
You know what? You are welcome anytime. But before we dive into sports, what the hell's going on with this FTX shit? I'm serious. I mean, I think a lot of people lose. This is like a Bernie Madoff thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's similar to that. So I can get into the background of it, but that maybe you want that, maybe you don't want that.
I think a lot of people don't understand. I think they think, well, I bought crypto. Why don't they have the crypto? This was like a holding company where you really didn't own it. What? I guess take me through.
Okay, so keep it as simple as possible,
okay,
because it can get a little bit too detailed. FTX is an exchange where they do different types of business. It includes the cryptocurrencies,
okay,
Bitcoin, Ethereum, et cetera. Now, the guy that founded that is this guy, Sam Friedman Black, Sam Black Friedman. I should know his name. It's around the name, Sam. And he's 30 years old, incredibly rich. He founded and was the CEO of FTX. Around the same time, he founded a research hedge fund organization called Alameda. Now, Alameda can do trades through the exchange. The exchange is just where you get stuff done.
Okay.
Right? So FTX is over here, is the exchange. Alameda is one of the companies doing business with them. Now, if you're a customer that has their account with FTX, it's with FTX. That's it. You know that. It's protected, et cetera. They started commingle funds. So like if I had my money with FTX, they would loan the money to Alameda and they would leverage it up so they could buy other things. And they would do that through FTX. That's commingling. That's out and out illegal. Now, when I'm paying attention to all this on television, everybody says, oh, I don't want to use that term for it. I don't want to use this because I'm not worried about that. I don't know what 100% reality is or the 100% legal side of this is. But I know what they're doing is bullshit. It's unethical at best. And at worst, it's absolutely illegal. I think it's fraud. It's all those things. So FTX last Thursday was worth $32 billion. Yesterday morning, they were worth zero. Now, FTX has responsibility. So if we've given our money to FTX, you expect to get the money back.
Absolutely. There's no money there.
So that's a real issue. That's another issue, right? So you've got that going on, and then you've got creditors of FTX, and yesterday they claimed bankruptcy. They filed for bankruptcy. So I heard 24 hours ago that they had 100,000 creditors. Now I think the number is closer to 1 million. And how much they're going to be able to give back to the people that are is ridiculous. Now, the real problem with something like that is the contagion. So how many big entities is this going to have an impact on, and is it going to create some sort of systemic impact with regard to the market? I don't believe that's going to be the case, but it's still a horrible thing. That's the background. I've got opinions on this, but that's the background.
That's
now,
incredible.
Was all of that disappeared, was it all cryptocurrency?
No, but I think there was a good chunk of it that was. And crypto, by the regulators, by people that, for example, Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, that don't like it or don't believe in it, they're very, very critical of it. And they're just saying, you see what's going on. Now, the real issue is this. Now, probably the biggest theme I have in my life that I really do believe in is kind of leadership. And if you guys recall, at Coastal and the Omaha Nighthawks, we had zero rules. Zero. We only people in the country, no rules. We had a standard. Stand on your own 2 feet, take responsibility for yourselves, treat others with dignity and respect, and live with the consequences of your actions. Now, you guys understand that I had about 120 guys, another 25 coaches, analysts, interns. We had 150 guys. Call that BAM, be a man.
Yep.
So the back of our jerseys in the stadium, et cetera. Now, the first thing is, well, that's sexist. Okay, well, let's cover this quickly. This is the same principle. I've got 3 daughters. The same principle I raised my daughters on, and it's been part of my life. I wrote this in my first high school when I was head coach, my first high school in Delaware 50 years ago. That's what I wrote. I thought it made sense. It's been with me the entire time, and it's the absolute, what I feel is the competitive advantage I've had in my lifetime. So it's taking responsibility for yourself. Again, it's leadership. So the regulators come in, the SEC and the CTFC come in, and they keep complaining about it. So what they do is they have enforcement action. So they'll they'll fine you as a company for issues. But this is, because there's not enough regulation, and because this can all be done anonymously, you got people in here that probably shouldn't be in. Not probably, they shouldn't be in here. They're stealing, the hiding stuff, the laundering money. They're doing all sorts of things that are wrong and illegal. But this, for the future, with regard to blockchain, for example, can become the currency that makes everything work. So crypto is real, and its benefits are real. But there's no regulation. Okay, so here I say you got to step up. The FTC and the CTFC and the SEC complain about this. So they have enforcement action. Enforcement action is a punishment, but it's not solving the problem. So first, we don't know who's in charge yet. So the SEC, Gensler, the chairman of the SEC, was being interviewed the other day, and they were asking him that. And they said, well, there's actually enough stuff here that we probably could all join together to do it. First of all, that's bullshit, because what's the first is going to happen? Nobody's specifically in charge. It blow up. One person, one regulator is going to blame the other regulator. That doesn't work. So one of them's got to take over the job. I don't know if that's the president's assignment. I don't know who does that, but there's nobody in charge. So again, our regulators, as sacrosanct as they are, have to step up and do their job. So.
Was there any other exchange outside of this one?
I mean, like I have a Coinbase
virtual
account. What does Coinbase? Do I own the crypto that I have some Bitcoin on there, like on Coinbase. Do I own that, or is that just a holding company?
No, okay, it'd be a holding company, but you could own the coins.
Okay.
Right, so the gold. In other words, I could own a gold stock.
Okay.
Okay, I can own a physical gold.
Okay.
If I have physical gold, I can hide it somewhere in here and have Hank keep an eye on it, or I can bring it to, or I can give it to somebody to custody for me. And that's where you would go for an exchange or a depository or something along those lines.
So Tom Brady's lost his ass on this, just to let you know.
Oh,
Yeah. Tom Brady and Giselle. I don't know how that prenup worked, but I guarantee the report is Tom Brady lost a ton of money.
Well, that would mean he had a ton of money with them. Now, he did some advertising for them.
Yes.
But I'm not aware what he had. That he had a lot of money invested.
That's what they're saying. I mean, it all hasn't come out yet, but they're saying Tom Brady had a significant amount of money with FTX, which is interesting. So, which leads me, because I think this does come to leadership. I think these are fascinating leadership conversations, because
100%.
Because I think sports teaches so much about business and business about. I think they all intertwined in some way when it comes to leadership. Right?
100%.
So, what in your lifetime? What's the worst thing is it Bernie Madoff? Is it this? What's the worst thing you've seen financially in your lifetime?
Two of the worst thing I think in the financial world, probably the Bernie Madoff thing, is kind of. Now, I've also heard subsequently to that actually a lot of people, a lot of investors got a decent chunk of their money back. But still, that was a big deal. Now,
did you know him?
No, I didn't know him. And you know what? He had such a reputation that if somebody that was really kind of privileged came to me and said, I could get you with Bernie Madoff, I probably would have trusted that.
Just because of the reputation.
Yeah, because of the reputation. But I would have trusted it based on the relationship and the trust I had in the person suggesting I can introduce you to Bernie. But thank goodness that never happened.
Yeah.
All right. But the other thing in terms of leadership, that's a money thing. In terms of leadership, and we talked about this last time, I think, or we should have. We'll talk about it now. The one of the most horrific examples of leadership that I have found in the business world or in the world of sports is what happened was the NCAA abdicating any responsibility and wanting nothing to do with NIL. And NIL is the most significant thing, in my opinion, that has happened to college athletics in the history of college athletics. Remember a while back, 40 years ago, or whenever it was, like SMU and some other schools got the death penalty.
Oh, yeah.
Everything they got the death penalty for, it'd be legal today. And besides abdicating any responsibility at all, they give Emmert a 2-year extension for another $1 million a year. I mean, like this is embarrassingly upsetting. And then the only thing that the NCAA did, now the portal already existed. I actually think a lot of the coaches don't like the portal because we lost some control there. But I think the portal was fair. But you did have to think about it. If you're going to transfer someplace else, you reckon they're going to sit out a year. There's a wisdom, I think, about that. It's a big decision. You're recruiting. There's a lot going on. But you can leave. You can sit out a year. They eliminated the transfer rule. So they have zero control over NIL. There's got to be, you guys would probably know better than I, but I bet you there's at least 60 players right now making over $1 million a year.
At Nebraska or all over the country?
All over the country.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the highest paid student athlete right now, believe it or not, is Olivia Dunn, an LSU gymnast who's at $2 million a year right now. Now, there's some criticism of her. She's making some money, but sex sells, right? I mean, let's be honest. So she wears scantily clad clothes sometimes. And Tara Vanderveer, who's the Stanford coach, said, well, we can't do this. This is setting women's sports back years. She's making $2 million a year. $2 million. She's got like 6 million Instagram followers, or 2.5 million Instagram followers, 6 million TikTok followers, and just cash it in from sportswear to everything. But I think there's probably 60 players for sure making $1 million.
Oh, easily.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you. When you look at what NIL did, and I've always been kind of a little more on the pro NIL side. If this had come about, now I'd be the first to tell you, I mean, it was a total, I mean, a lot of people use the word or the phrase, it was a Wild West scenario. I mean, it was just kind of one of those, here, we're just going to open up Pandora's box and just let it go, and whatever happens, happens. My question is if you came out, what is your opinion on if you had NIL, but whether it was the NC2As or some other organizational structure came in and said, okay, so here's the rules. This is how we're going to do it. Here's some limits on it. Here's a little bit of a governor on the engine. If you had that, what's your opinion on that? If you did NIL, but you had some kind of structure to it. And the reason I asked that, and part of the reason I've been pro NIL, is because I went to college. I mean, I grew up very middle-class family in Lincoln, Nebraska. You know what? If I needed something in college, I'd go home. I'd just drive across Lincoln to my parents' house and just like, hey, you know what? Training table is closed tonight. It's Sunday night. Have dinner, and I brought a couple of guys with me, kind of thing. Or get my laundry done for free at mom and dad's house, so on and so forth. That was very easy for me. I mean, talk about privilege of opportunity from where I came from. But I had guys like, Brendan Stye. I remember Brendan Stye, like 1 year his mom had what for them was an absolute windfall. And he didn't come from a lot of money. And his mom sent him this huge box right before Christmas. He's excited as heck, opens it up, and it's like a dress shirt and a pair of black jeans, a pair of blue jeans, a pair of slacks, maybe one tie.
And that's a windfall.
And that was like every penny she had went into that, and Brendan knew it. And you've never seen a guy, so incredibly grateful and B, so damn happy to get those clothes. I mean, he was so happy to have a couple pairs of jeans and just a plain white Oxford dress shirt. That was high life living for him. And so I saw guys go through that where freaking toilet paper was a commodity for some of these kids. And so I look at that and I'm thinking, man, if these guys got an opportunity to make a little bit of money, and I understand having the structure on it, having some regulations on it, but maybe not $2 million a year, but then it also kind of comes back to
Joe, what would be better? NIL, nothing, or these guys become employees of the university?
All right, the problem with employees of the universities, that becomes, you start to deal with labels. So I was at the Division I Athletic. I gave the keynote at April at Division I Athletic Directors Conference, and I sat in all the meetings. And I gave the closing keynote, and they asked me to give my unfiltered perspective of what's going on in college athletics.
Unfiltered for you is not that difficult.
Well, that's what they wanted. By the way, I knew it would be a little bit controversial, so I asked like 4 different people. I said, "Are you sure you really want me to do this?" And I was very sensitive to the ADs, and I was very complimentary of them. But at the end of the day, this goes back and is rooted. So you ask, what do I think is the best? I will come back to that. But at the end of the day, you got, on one hand, I mean, I got married and I began coaching when I was in college, but I supported my wife and my daughter all while I was in college. And I paid every dime of my education. And then if I had somebody give me a scholarship, like, what a wonderful opportunity that would be. So there's a little piece of me that says, hey, we know you're working hard and we know all those things, but you are getting room, board, books, tuition, et cetera. Okay. But when you look at the amount of money, in Nebraska would make over time, you can start to argue that. I get that. Remember, I am also very, very pragmatic, and I'm a business guy. All right, so if you look at where the money flows and you figure that out, you're probably going to be able to understand what's going to happen next. You don't have to be prophetic; just follow the money. So 10 years ago, when Delaney negotiated the revenues, the television revenue contract with for the Big Ten, that's why Nebraska and others wound up joining the Big Ten. We'll talk about UCLA and USC in a second, but it was all because of television revenues. When Nebraska first joined, maybe they were in the 3rd or 4th year, Nebraska got about $32 million. Last year, everybody in the Big Ten got around $70 million. Nebraska, Michigan State, Ohio State, Rutgers got $70 million. About, could be 65, 72, around that. Then they renegotiated. So because they were the first ones to have the television contract, they also were the first ones now to renegotiate. On the renegotiation of the contract, I think UCLA and SC become part of the Big Ten in 24. So maybe this kicks in 24, maybe it kicks in 23. But the next number is going to be $100 million.
Yes.
Now, $100 million just for football once a year. Okay, now, it's very, very fair now for me to step back as an athlete or an agent or a lawyer and say, well, whoa. You're arguing, you add up the scholarship, maybe it's worth 30, 40, 50, 60,000, or whatever it is. But just, by the way, it doesn't count filling the stadium. It doesn't count anything else. $100 million. Like, what? We deserve a piece of that. So what happened was 6-7 years ago, the NCAA didn't want to do any of that. College didn't want to give any up. But they're not looking at the world. They're not being pragmatic. They're being academia. They're up in a cloud.
Ivory tower.
Is the same.
I always use it was ivory tower.
Ivory tower is perfect.
That was the term I always used.
But it's a perfect one. It's a perfect one. So, but if they looked at it and say, okay, the world's changing. So they came up with a compromise. Cost of attendance. You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
The cost of attendance was like
100%.
$5,000. $5,000. So everybody's sort of satisfied for a minute. And I'm still just looking at it. And again, I'm head coach of coach. I'm looking at it and go, and we have to decide whether we're going to do that. So we got to do it. We're going to compete $5,000.
Because Coastal's a much different situation than Nebraska. I mean, does the Sun Belt have a revenue share? Do you get any money?
It's minimal. So if we have a great year and we finish rationally ranked in the country, and maybe the total package we would get, total, $3-4 million. Let's put it in perspective. By the way, were you talking about? Did you point out too that we're been nationally ranked every year ahead of Nebraska? Were you pointing that out? Is that what you're saying?
No, I was letting you. I was going to let you gloat. Is what I was going to do.
No,
You need to be looking at me because that's the Iowa.
I'm an Iowa guy. So.
I'm the Husker over here. That's,
I take it back.
that you're saying that I'm sitting over here going like, God damn son of a bitch.
So we've
Freaking
got
Chanticleers.
So our entire, let's review. Last year, everybody in the Big Ten got $70 million just for football. Our entire athletic budget, including football, the entire budget, including football, is $34 million.
And that's probably stretching that athletic department pretty good, right?
Well, yeah, by definition it does.
Now,
And we're always fighting for that.
And I got to believe, and tell me if I'm wrong, you're not a self-supported athletic department. No way. So you're getting money from the university.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, yes, absolutely. And then the university is going to get somebody from the state, then, you put it, put a fee on the students thing. I mean, that's the way most of the world does it. And that's the way I think everybody does it. But the difference is now this TV revenue stream is coming in really high from the last 10 years or so. So everybody settled down literally for about 6 months. Okay, well, we're happy to get $5,000. Then they're going, whoa. They're going to get $50 million. They're going to get $60 million, $70 million. And we're getting, what, $5,000 a kid? I said, so how about the really good ones? How about the really good ones are the reasons why you guys are getting $70 million. So what are we doing taking care of them? It makes sense. Something's going to happen there. So while I'm not crazy about the concept, I absolutely see it happening. And in the world of business, and college athletics is certainly business, what I think I would have done if I were part of the NCAA is I would have taken a leadership role and said, okay, this is here. Everybody, let's regulate. This is here. So now I'm getting back to the question you had asked, Travis, and let's acknowledge it's going to be here. Let's acknowledge it's big money. Let's acknowledge that the school's not going to come up, but boosters are going to come in and going to do what has to happen, and but we're going to provide structure. We're going to provide guidelines. We're going to provide rules. And if we were in the middle of that whole formation, meaning the NCAA, NIL would have been announced, just like cost of attendance, but it's not everybody getting some money. It's depending on the value, depending on the way you'd word it, depending on the value of your name, image, and likeness for my business, I'll pay you for that. Now, if you're really, really good, I could pay you $100,000 a month, and I want you to show up every Thursday just to sign autographs. Or I could do a commercial with you where you say, hey, I love blah, blah, blah. I love that laundromat. I love that. That's terrific. So if they had been involved, the right thing would have been NIL with structure and guidelines led by the NCAA, and then everybody have to do that by end of that. But that's not what happened. They abdicated. So when it happened, it was the Wild Wild West. Again, there are no rules. And when I was at the athletic director conference in April, they were going to come up with their plan to kind of fix this. Well, the NIL was already a year and a half ahead of them, at least a year ahead of them, and now they're probably almost 2 years ahead of them. College athletics hasn't come up with anything yet.
They still don't have any idea
no.
on how to regulate.
No. Well, they're not. No.
It's going to be hard for a lot of this stuff to walk it back.
You can't walk it back. It's not walk back. You're not going to. NIL is not coming back. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. You can't do it. And the power that the Power 5 conferences have because of the amount of money, they're not going to go back and listen to what the NCAA has to say. They actually recommended they ought to break away anyway.
Well, and that's the key is they hold all the power since they own football and the NCAA doesn't. They can always say, well, if we don't like what you say, we can go do our own thing. Now,
which I'm still shocked we didn't see that.
Well, I hear the reason they don't is because
they
don't want to go do all the other bullshit regulatory stuff when it comes to grades and academics. Why would you want to take that on if you don't have to, right? You've got something built. The interesting part is, Joe, and I don't know if you've heard this number. We've heard it in Nebraska. The yearly payroll to raise for their collective is $10 million. They need a $10 million payroll a year to keep everybody happy. Is that number higher than you thought it would be? And that's just for football. I think a little bit of basketball and some volleyball. $10 million a year payroll.
I think it's lower than I thought it would be.
Really?
Now I trust trust your information on this. So if you say it's 10, I buy that. I believe it's 10. But I mean, in 1 month after announcing NIL, A&M came up with $22 million.
Yeah.
Today it's probably $40, $50 million. I think some of the, I mean, you include Nebraska in this, but Nebraska at least has some principles. But football's important, and they got to compete, so they got to do what other people are doing. No, I think for the schools that have wealthy boosters that are fanatical about the football program, that love giving to the university, and now have an opportunity, instead of giving directly to the university, because they're still ahead of giving to the university, but instead, I've got an opportunity to be able to sponsor or hire Rob, who's one of our best players, who's going to get to the NFL, and he's going to represent my business, my car company, or whatever it might be. So that's a direct connection that feels a little better and tighter for me than just giving some money to the school. Right. So I think you've got a lot of people with a lot of wealth that love their university and love the football programs. And there's a tremendous amount of money out there. Now, $10 million a year coming up every year. Well, the point is, if you're giving somebody $1 million a year, if one kid, he's got to get it the next year too. So it is recurring.
Yes.
So you got to rebuild it every year.
Yeah.
Now you want to know what our collective number is right now?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you.
$75,000.
That's all your collective is?
Yeah.
That's like Iowa.
You know what? No, it really is. I was struggling with its collective. Only 220 people have contributed. Because I don't know if people are on board. Because you know why? For so many years, Kirk Ferentz has sold we've done it the right way. We take 2 stars and develop 4 stars. And I think people buy into that.
Well, the interesting thing about Nebraska is that, I call them boosters. And they are. They very much are. So I've got friends who are boosters.
Jock sniffers.
No,
not necessarily.
Really.
No, but
not really.
Some are.
Some are.
Some
but not
definitely
necessarily.
are.
No.
Now, the people that I'm friends with who are boosters, it's not the $1 million a year guys. It's not the $50,000 a year guys. It's guys that are kind of in this like $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 a year.
That's where
guy,
ABM made most of its money.
It is.
They went for the $5,000.
But here's the thing: is that in Nebraska, I think a lot of the booster support, there's $1 million a year guys. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But a couple of these boosters that I'm friends with, these $5,000, $10,000 a year guys, they said if you look at the dollars coming into UNL from for the athletic department from a booster standpoint, the vast majority of it, it's not from $5 or $10 million plus year guys. It's from hundreds and hundreds of $10,000 a year guys. Is where it's coming from.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a dynamic that they even said is sort of oddly unique to Nebraska, that it's not like you got like a Warren Buffett out there who's giving $10 million a year to the athletic department. You don't have that. It's this almost endless stream of $10,000 a year people is where it's coming from. But again, like what you had mentioned, all of that now is feeding into the NIL for Nebraska.
So Joe, at Coastal, I would say probably the NIL doesn't scare you the most. It's probably if you got a kid who starts playing really well, and then the transfer portal probably affects Coastal more than anything, doesn't it?
Well, but no, the NIL's part of that. So we've got we've got our kid now. He was injured. He might miss the rest of the season, but he's a 2-time Player of the Year in the conference. Grayson McCall, he's on the watch list for the Heisman Trophy. If he decides to opt out, he's going to be a first, second round kid. He's a legitimate kid. Now, if I am one of the largest schools in the country that we care about football, pick any one of them, but we don't have a quarterback, this kid's legit, right? So a lot of the times the kids, because of NIL, if they're good, they may love this school. Grayson has a Chanticleer tattooed on his calf, but I could easily see him putting his name on a portal just to like find out what's going on, what's out there. And I could see if they thought that this kid could help win the national championship, they had everything else. He doesn't have a quarterback. I could see him being offered $3 million a year to go there. All right. So now I know we can't compete, but again, I'm a business guy and I'm pragmatic. I know that can happen. So I can sit here and whine about it, or I can make sure I'm doing the best job I can. I got to recognize very, very quickly there's going to be 35, 40 schools in the country that even though we can compete against them, like maybe today, or half of them, we can't compete with them. So let's not make believe we can compete with them, but let's do a great job, a great job in our area with regard to what we can do. So when a few years ago when the portal came out, all the coaches really moaned and groaned about this because the coaches had so much control. But and I was in for 2 days, and then I thought about, you know what, if a kid really thinking about transferring, you know what, that's fair. I shouldn't have control over that. A portal's a good thing. So I came out for it. But again, it's a serious decision because of the transfer rule. All right, so now you fast forward and NIL happens. The NCAA is literally not involved, nowhere to be seen. They've abdicated any responsibility for that. But they made one decision, let's get rid of the transfer rule. So what you have is somebody at any point in time put his name up on the portal, and anybody that looks at him say, oh, we could use that kid, can come up with whatever money they need to come up to get him. A little different than money you might need to keep him to get him, and he transfers immediately. Now, is that what this was all intended for? No, I don't think so. But it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense that that's the reality of what's happening.
So you ran your football program like a business. You were the CEO. You ran it like that. When you look around college athletics now, are college athletic departments? Well, I'm going to ask you, business. Are they good? Are they well-run businesses or poorly run businesses?
They are mediocre. I think you have a lot of very sharp athletic directors. Not necessarily sharp. Now, some are. There was always exceptions, and some I think are really sharp. But for the most, well, let's talk about a couple of examples. Look at the severance packages ex-coaches are getting. Those contracts were determined between the athletic, had to be approved by the president, I assume, and maybe even the board, but between the agent and a lawyer and the athletic director and whomever else is helping him. And you mind if I take a minute and just kind of chat about this?
No, you can go wherever you want.
Okay, so you got
really
a typical contract. Okay, let's just call it 5 years, and nice contract, good money, whatever it is. And after 3 years, you say, you know what, this is the wrong guy for us. Like
Jimbo Fisher's a great example at Texas A&M. The dude got a guaranteed deal, and his buyout right now is like $96 million. That makes zero fiscal sense.
Okay, I don't think any of these make any fiscal sense.
Okay, does Kirk Ferentz's make sense?
No, it's like $46 million.
Yeah.
It makes zero sense.
Like we're bitching about Scott Frost getting $15 million. Kirk is 42.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I'm not saying
it's
we're going to fire Kirk
they're,
Ferentz.
yeah, but they're the principles. They're really the principles. We can talk about Frost too if you want to. But let's finish this. So okay. So what happens is now the coach knows his ass on the line. The agent is aware of the ass. Now remember, all the agent gets a percentage of anything guaranteed. Whatever he gets, that's what he's getting. Anything that he's getting. All right. So the agent's having a conversation with the coach and everybody recognizes. So they either really believe this or they put together a little scenario. They got to have some substance behind it where they sit down with the athletics. Right? Look, we had to turn the program around. It was shit before. We reestablished a whole new culture and foundation. We established, bam, we got everybody's loving each other. We're ready to go. But it took us that while to get here. Now look at, we've done a little better last year. And look at our guys. We are ready to turn the corner. Okay. That's fair. You know what? Keep the contract. We'll honor the contract. We got 2 more years. Okay, well, let's talk about that for a minute. We are ready to turn the corner. And by the way, this has been going on for at least 10, 12 years, maybe 15, 20 years. I said, but every time we have recruiting weekend, the kid says, well, coach, like we know there's some issues here. Like, are you going to be here? And the coach got to tell him whatever he's got to tell him. Well, he wants to be, but he doesn't know for sure, blah, 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 blah. So the only way that you can protect the program that's ready to turn around the corner, and he already committed to another couple of years, is you've got to extend his contract 2 more years. So when a recruit comes in, he can say, absolutely, they extended my contract. I'm going to be here the entire time you're here. Let's stop for a second. But by the way, this is what's happening.
Yes.
Okay, so let's stop for a minute. I was thinking about firing you 2 hours ago. And within that 2 hours, I've extended your contract 2 years. Oh, by the way, I've extended another 2 years. I hope you didn't, but maybe even gave the guy a raise like they did with the NCAA. So what happens then, you get to the fourth year. Now, remember, there's always exceptions, but this is pretty fair example. You know what? We got the wrong guy. It's a mistake. It's a mistake. You know, we got to cut our loss. We got to make a tough decision. We got to go. And you're getting heat from everybody around you. Now you cut him. Now guess what? Oh, now you got to pay him out for 3.5 years. And the severance package becomes whatever it is, whether it's $10 million or $80 million or 20, whatever it is. That's what happens. So I cannot understand a poorer example of understanding business and business leadership than agents doing this consistently to the athletic directors and the presidents of our country. And it's happening again and again and again and again and again. One more point. And this is the one that kind of hits me the most. But I find all that ludicrous. I was given with the ADs too, besides the NIL, I was talking about this principle. Say, if you have a contract with you're a coach in the NFL, you got a 5-year contract, what happens? You honor the contract. If I fire you, that's okay, but I got to pay you out. And if I don't want to extend it, that's okay. Then we renegotiate it. We'll figure it out. But it's a 5-year contract. That's it. Nobody can mess with you. You can't come in, right? That's it. In the business world, CEO or senior executive's got a 5-year contract. Nobody else can come in and stop messing around with that. It's you can't do that.
Probably a non-compete in there too, right? Or something like that?
Yeah, there may very well be. Okay. College athletics. Let's talk about football for a minute. We have this thing that we call a buyout. Now, so if the typical Power 5 coach is going to make that, they want, it's going to make $5 million, and the typical buyout was like $750,000, and I'm getting a check for the Big Ten for $70 million, and I'm already willing to pay a severance package of like $25 million. Oh my God, no way I can touch this guy. I got to pay a $750,000 buyout. So it's irrelevant. But for the agents, oh no, the buyout's critical because you have to have freedom to be able to move. And I don't know if the buyout might even be charged against them, but they are fanatical about it. Okay, so I have a major problem with this. If the NFL ran themselves like college is running themselves now, like you don't have to honor a contract and you can leave anytime you want to, and with these incredible severance packages, they'd go out of business. No, they're not going out of business, but they would struggle, be a bad thing for them. So what happens is, like my guys, I love my guy, Jamie. I love the guy. But somebody's going to eventually ask him to take over the program.
I mean, he's been on like every watch list. I mean, his name gets brought up all the time.
As it should be. But he's not going to leave for, he's not going to leave for like a double. He's going to leave for a significant, and I'll tell him he should leave for a significant increase. You think he's going to go any place that doesn't have NIL money? No, he's not going to go any place with NIL money. And you think he's not going to go someplace that's going to give him a significant budget for his coaches, his staff? Okay, now he leaves. Now, Jamie would say to me, well, Coach, I would never take one of our players. And I believe him. By the way, I love the guy. And I totally trust him and respect him. And he's happy at Coastal. But while he wouldn't recruit one of our guys, if everybody puts the name up on the portal, he'd say to me, he said, Coach, well, he said, I can't let him go someplace else. Okay, so he's got NIL money to take our very, very best players. By the way, this would be typical of anybody. I'm
sure would.
What's closest to me as a real example. He goes someplace else. We get $750,000 buyout or something ridiculous. We're committed to trying to make the program more competitive and all those things we've got going on. And he could take every one of our staff and he could take every one of our players and they could play for him right away if they want to. So the commitment that he and I have and our effort that he and I together put in over the last decade to get Coastal to where we are today, you can almost decimate the program. So I got to make sure we are really, really ready to go. So if Jamie were to announce at noontime he's leaving, then 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we're going to announce we got a new guy. And you got to recognize. So I think there used to be a time, and I felt this was a competitive advantage I have. Coach Osborne had it and others had it, where you were really building a program. You're bringing in the right guys. The 2-star to the 4-star, you do, but you're building a program. You're doing all those things. You'll bring in an outside guy once in a while, but you're really building a program. And the kids know that. They feel that. They're part of the family. You're going to bring kids that are going to be part of that. But that kind of goes away now because it becomes a little bit more like, yeah. I mean, how many times are you watching a game where like somebody did a good job? So, yeah, he was a transfer. He was a transfer.
Every game on every Saturday.
Well, that's only going to increase.
So, well, the way I hear you talking then, and it's almost taking a business plan. You said if Jamie left, you would have a new guy named like 2 o'clock. Do you have succession plan in mind? Or are you building a succession plan at Coastal already?
I think any leader, if you don't build a succession plan, you're not doing your job. I've had a succession plan in mind since the time I was head coach, and I look at that every year. So, yeah.
But
I did that originally with Jamie, and then immediately I started doing what happens if Jamie leaves and goes someplace else. By the way, a lot of people, no, I don't do that. Okay, you should fire that guy. Because this is the job. Part of your job is succession planning. The most important job a board has is the succession planning on the CEO. I think the most important job a university board has is the succession plan of the president. And it's like you knew this guy was stepping down for the last 3 years, and you're kind of working on this the last couple of months. So I think in athletics, if you're not totally, absolutely staying on top of, but as a football coach, when I was coaching, I had to file for like the top 2 or 3 linebacker coach or the defense, the secondary coaches, the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, recruiting coordinator. I had to file 2 or 3 of those in every one of those positions every year that I would always try to stay on top of. So if I'm responsible for the program, I'd be doing the same thing. But I've done this every job I've ever had.
Have you talked to Trev Alberts at all during his coaching search?
No, but that's no big deal. But the answer is no. But that doesn't matter. But in terms of what my job, remember, to me, I'm not a business guy. Just happen to be in football. I'm a football coach, but I'm pragmatic enough that there is a business element to this that makes you a better football coach with a better football program. So some of these things that like kind of I do, people say, "Oh wow, you do that?" I'm thinking like, yeah, I started that probably 25, 30 years ago.
And my question was not based on whether you'd wanted to coach Nebraska. It was based on just advice of who's out there from a business standpoint. Because I think you have a lot of knowledge to
which
provide.
Actually somebody made a point on Twitter that because it stayed fairly quiet. There's been a ton of rumors, but normally when a Nebraska coach gets fired, you hear a lot of chatter that comes out of the athletic department, that comes out of Lincoln. And when Trev fired Scott, I mean, it was just, God, it was radio silent. And it has been ever since. But somebody made the point that the reason that's the case, they think, is that Trev had a I can't even talk.
Succession
plan already in place where he knew he had this top 3 list, top 5 list, whatever it is. And it wasn't a situation where he had to travel around the country. He had to go talk to guys. He already had this in place. And he's going to wait till the season's over and he's going to make his announcement. But a lot of people are saying the reason it's been so quiet is because he did have that succession plan all ready to go.
So I would applaud him for that. By the way, I know Trevor a little bit. I mean, he was at UNO when I was here, and I know him a little bit, and we're not buddies, but I know him. I like him. I respect him. I think he's a solid guy. I like the fact that he left broadcasting to become the guy at UNO, and I could have easily seen him that he would wind up in Nebraska, and I think that would have been good for Nebraska. But by the way, and I would hope he had a succession plan. Okay, so let's stop there. He got a succession plan. Well, should Scott have been fired last year?
Yes.
The first. Okay, well then, if you got a succession plan and you got a plan, do it. Now, here's the one spot where I am critical of him, and I've said it out loud. You should have done it in the past. It should have already been done. But you do it, whatever, the middle of September, middle of October, whenever it was, and you wait 2 weeks and you save $7.5 million, and you don't need to do that. And when you see the paper, the press release, one of the things you said, well, we want to do this for our kids. I have no idea what that even means. Giving Scott an extra $7.5 million for 2 weeks, yeah, we're doing that for our kids. I don't get that. And he says, but it's the price of kind of doing business. We had it. We have the money. We have the assets. We have it. Okay. You don't do things because you happen to have it. You make smart decisions with the money you have. But that reinforces the point I'm making, that the universities in athletics have so much money, they do not know how to manage it. They do not know how to manage it. So what do you wind up with? You wind up with you just had the most spectacular weight room in the world. And you'd build a new spectacular weight room 5 years later. Okay, I don't know. That doesn't make any sense, but you do it. And you say, well, we got to keep up with everybody else. That weight room probably lasts the next 25 years, and nobody's not going to come because that weight room is not as spectacular, perhaps, as somebody else's weight room. And but you've got to, and that's where the money comes in with regard to the coaches. I got to do whatever I can. The pressure's so great. I got to win, so I'm going to do whatever I can to get this particular guy. But do a good analysis when you hire. By the way, you know how many coaches, head coaches decisions are made that are mistakes?
A lot.
Ton. Right. So I said, what? Look at the resume, and was that? Oh my God, that was great. We got that guy, or it's okay. I hope this one's going to be right. Most of the time, you can say, okay, I hope this one's going to be right, but you want to make a splash. Recruiting, signing day. Big splash. Oh my God, we got this 5-star recruit. We got this. We got one of the best classes in the country. Irrelevant. Evaluate that 2 years later and see how many of those guys that were big shots in signing day are still with the program and at least part of the 2 deeper special teams. If a guy was injured, you don't count that. I've done this analysis. Actually, I did it when I was at Nebraska. I did it with 5 schools. I don't want to get into that part too much, but 50% of the picks were mistakes, 50%. So when I went to Coastal, I think, okay, here were some of the reasons why we made those mistakes. I said, so if I can just eliminate those mistakes, maybe our percentage success is going to be a little better. And frankly, I think it's about probably 72%. I think that's bad, but it's not bad in reality what's going on in the world. So this is happening again and again and again and again. Here's where business, you got to be able to get the job done. You hire a great guy. You got to win the press conference. You win the press conference on opening day. A lot of not opening day. The signing your coach, opening. Okay, it doesn't matter. Evaluate what he ultimately does, and that's the home run. Even if he's not as popular as you like opening day, if he starts, I wasn't popular at Coastal Carolina.
You weren't.
They hated me. Okay, but they started and said, whoa, this guy's not so bad. So we don't hold, again, leadership principle. You have to be accountable for what you've done, and you live with the consequences of your actions. I see mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake. We haven't even gotten to politics on this yet, and nobody's really held accountable. You're able to get away with making horrible, horrible decisions. When was it Peterson was AD, and Harvey Perlman was the chancellor?
Yes.
When they fired Callahan.
Well, no, Peterson was fired before Callahan. So Peterson got fired, and then Tom came in as interim, and then fired Callahan after the season.
Okay, so a year or two before that, when everybody knew Callahan was on the ropes, Peterson gave him a bigger contract.
Yes,
that the chancellor had to sign.
And if I'm not mistaken, Peterson got a bigger contract from.
That's where I'm going. Okay, then the chancellor, I'm sure they sold that too. Well, I got to be here with my coach. I got to be here. Same. It's agent talk. It's not real world talk. So it's like so he gets a bigger contract for a guy we kind of know we're going to fire, right? I mean, we kind of knew that. I'd say the same thing about Scott. I said we kind of he's going to be fired. And oh, by the way. How about me? I got to be with the guy. I'm your guy. You got to count on me. Harvey wasn't totally focused on football or athletics, but I am. I'm your guy. I'm your guy. I need a bigger contract. I get a bigger contract. So a year or so later, I get fired. I get a big severance package, and then Callahan gets fired, and he gets a bigger severance package. Now, you're kidding. Like, you're joking. Like that's real. If somebody told me that, and I truly feel a part of Nebraska, and I truly love the place. Our team, our program, the school, the state, Omaha, I really genuinely do. If somebody said that to me, I go, no, that wouldn't happen in Nebraska. No, that wouldn't happen. I wouldn't even believe it.
Joe, it's happened over and over.
It happens
and over
all the
again.
time. Yes, it happens all the time here, but it happens a lot of places.
What was it? With Scott's, they're at $51 million for the payouts in the last 10 years. $51 million in payouts. For many coaches,
for one guy.
For coaches and ADs in Nebraska, it's a lifestyle change to get fired. You're set up for the rest of your life. I mean, in business, I understand you're going to give a severance package. Probably not life-changing severance package, are they? When you fire somebody?
No, they're not going to be life-changing.
Yeah.
No, the ones that are life change. You've already made the life change. No, business is business. They're going to make good business. Now that doesn't mean they can't make stupid decisions, but I acknowledge I can make a stupid decision. Anybody can make a stupid decision. I understand that. I get that. I buy that. I appreciate that. But when that happens almost as a way of life, that's an embarrassment.
Oh, I would agree with you.
That's an embarrassment.
You okay there, Rob?
I'm good. I got my caffeine here.
All right,
I'm like recaffeinated.
I thought you were getting up to take a piss, but no.
I'm refilling. I'm recharging right now.
You know, you brought something up. I'm curious because you said you weren't really liked when you first started at Coastal, and I remember that.
Well, this is a great point. Can I circle back to something?
Absolutely.
Before we get on that.
Yeah.
You talked about when you were looking at recruits. And you said when you looked at these 4-star guys, 5-star guys, big name 3-star guys, whatever, you said when you really did an analysis, you went back and you looked 2-3 years later. And you said, yeah, it was maybe about 50% of the time you were wrong. What were the reasons that these guys didn't pan out? Is that something you can speak to?
Yeah, I can speak to that because they are the principles I used at Coastal to help us. They were what I figured were mistakes. Now, remember, I coached for 16 years before I went to the business world.
True.
And having come back and sitting in all the meetings at Nebraska, I can see, well, other than the technology and a little bit some of the things in the game, they didn't change much. Really didn't change much. And stuff that I thought didn't quite make sense my first time around, I'm thinking, it really doesn't make sense now. Okay, so there's part, and I didn't know for sure if I was going to get a job, but I thought I was unique enough somebody to take a shot at me. And I said, but they're not going to give me a great job. They're going to give me a job struggling, and but I've kind of had to do that all my life anyway. So I got to come in. I know I know that, but I better get recruiting right. I better hire the right people to coach, and I better get recruiting right. So that's why I felt I needed to do an analysis. And I don't even think I included Nebraska in the analysis. There were 5 teams. What the hell? I don't remember. I could probably get them wrong, but I think it was Oklahoma, Colorado. I don't remember. 2, 3 other teams. And I think I went back 5 years and had some of my staff. I got this from SI. The information's all out there. It was easy to get. And then I gave it some of my staff to just kind of break down and analyze. So once you had the data, all I was looking at, who did you announce? It wasn't that sophisticated. Who did you announce the signing day? And after 2 seasons, who was like going into the 3rd season, who started, or who's on the 2 deep, and who played special teams. And I didn't count guys who were injured. And I saw 50% of them weren't there. 50% here, there were big shots, weren't on the 2 deep 2+ years later. Going into the 3rd season.
That actually seems about right. And maybe it's because I've never been a big fan of recruiting anyway. I mean, we do not talk recruiting on this podcast.
Yeah, well,
a little bit. We're not Sean Callahan recruiting.
No, we don't go in depth.
Yeah, we don't go in. Oh, they signed a guy. Big deal.
What's a reason guys didn't make it? Were there common themes when guys didn't make it?
I didn't look at why they didn't make it. I didn't look at why they didn't make it, but I looked at what were the common mistakes I believed existed from having coached and recruited. Right. So I might miss one because I haven't thought about this for a little while. So when I got to Coastal. Again, I had to hire the right people, but in terms of how we were going to recruit, when you're recruiting, especially during the season, I mean, again, you know what the life is like. You're working 75, 80 hours a week. You don't get a day off. What happens? You're exhausted. I mean, you're exhausted. Now, coaches act like this. I don't like this either. But sometimes we act like we're blockheads. We act like macho, tough guys, and we brag we worked 15 hours yesterday. I find that doesn't do a whole lot for me. And then when it's time to recruit, you're exhausted, but you got to you got to visit a high school game on a Friday, or you got to make like 10 calls over a weekend. You're exhausted. You got no zip, nothing left. Okay. Then in the off season, you're still exhausted from the season. So now you go out and road, you're recruiting, doing all your things. Here's some of the things that happen. First, at the staff meeting, not staff meeting, within the staff. Usually you want somebody to corroborate your view of perspective of a player. So you ask, I'm the coordinator, and I ask my defensive line, what do you think of this guy? If he's neutral on the guy, he's probably going to tell me, oh, yeah, I think he's okay. Now, if he's negative, he's going to tell the truth.
Yeah.
But because you know what? I'm going to show him my guy now. And remember, I don't think any of them think this guy stinks, but I'm going to tell him he's okay. No, but there's so many borderline calls go either way. They go the way of the guy that's asking to help out. So one of the things we did then was I said, no one can watch film together on an individual recruit. Can't do that. And I want 3 separate coaches evaluating the kid, and I want 3 separate coaches with independent grades. And all this, like, was this guy an All-American? Is he going to be an F? Is he going to be this? Like, everybody's got all different crazy perspective. But you spend too much time talking about a kid. Again, increases your exhaustion, right? So, well, he's pretty good to his left, but he's not as fluid as he should be. He's got twitch hips, and you kind of go on. Okay. So we had letter grades, A, B, C. So A was, there's no way ever, under any circumstance, I ever want to play against this kid. All right. He was an A. Then there's a C where, like, I would mortgage my house and offer to sell my children and my wife so I get an opportunity to play against this guy. That's a C. So somewhere in the middle is a B. Now, we knew we weren't going to get A's, but we got to get B pluses to win. So, but B pluses mean I got 3 individual separate grades from coaches. There's no overlap.
Blind test? Like,
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What I find interesting about this, because this happens in basketball a lot, and I don't know if it happens in football, is that assistant coaches end up fighting one another because they want their guy. So you eliminated that. You just did an analytical approach to say, all right, where's the grade at 3 different blind tests? Here's what it is. If it's a B plus, he's probably going to get a deal, right? I mean, but you don't have an assistant coach going, but come on, coach, I really believe in this guy. I mean, it takes the emotion out of it.
It takes the emotion out. And when you're at a meeting. In the beginning, the guys were still used to doing it the way they've always done it. And they start to go through and I'm trying to be respectful early on in my first year. And they're like, you've been talking about this kid for 4 minutes. Is he an A, B, or C? Then he said, well, A, B, or C. B plus. Okay, we're good. Next guy. You didn't get it. Is he an A, B, or C? Then eventually we go around the table very seriously talking about recruits. And we go, no, he's a B. No, he's an A. I said, well, why do you guys disagree? We said, okay, there's a reason why we disagree. But you didn't know that because you were looking at the film together. You made independent decision on that. So for me, that felt that if I had 3 coaches, by the way, here's another thing. A coach could be a very good coach and a shitty recruiter. A guy could be a great recruiter and a good coach and a shitty evaluator of talent. All those things kind of come together. You could do a good job of evaluating a kid as a senior in high school, but you're not able to project to what he might be don't go to a senior year, it's too far, but like as a sophomore in college. So those are all different skill sets. But I believe by doing it this way independently, most of the time, we were going to be right, picking the right athlete. Okay, that's the first thing. Second thing, signing day. You already brought it up here. Iowa, you take a 2-star, make him a 4-star. People talk about how many stars he's got. We never were allowed to talk about that. We don't want to hear about stars. We don't even know about it. I don't care if he's a 1-star, 24-star. I don't want to know. If you bring it up, it's a problem. You got to leave the room. You got to stand in the corner. You can't bring that up. So we don't talk about stars. But here's the biggest faux pas that gets made. And remember, everybody's tired, but everybody's got a big competitor. Let me begin in my own little world. Lafayette, the big competitor is Lehigh. By the way, they're going to play the 158th game this Saturday.
Really? Are you going?
No, I'll go to Virginia. No, I'm not going to go to that game. But so big, we're sitting around. And I remember when I first joined the staff, I was coming from high school. And they embraced me as a coach. But when it came to recruiting, because I had not done that before, it was like, then I'm going to give benefit to a guy that's a little smaller and stuff like that. You know, I would be challenged a lot as far as that. That's fine. But all I had to say, well, no, Lehigh's recruiting the guy. Well, you know, I think you got a good point there. And then I would get the guy because I said Lehigh. Now, if I said that, I'm sure it was the truth. But the
You're
truth
positive.
is, no, but the truth is that doesn't mean Lehigh evaluated the kid,
Yeah.
right? Right. So we're assuming Lehigh did everything right and all those things take place. But if I said Lehigh or any guys on staff was on a borderline kid said Lehigh, he's getting in. Or not he's getting in. We're going to recruit him. Dartmouth. Now here I was already established myself by then. It kind of I think I was respecting something what I would say. I said this guy blah 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 blah. But the head coach still it was Joe Moglia. He was the head coach of Boston College. At the time, he was the winningest coach of Boston College. He left Boston College to take a 10-year deal, lifetime deal at Dartmouth. So he was respected around the country. Anyway, so he, so he would kind of chime. No, coach, this is what I think. This is what I think. This is blah 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 blah. But again, he'd want to look at the film himself. By the way, one of the things I really almost never did was. Why would I need to look at? I had 3 guys evaluate the guy, and I'm going to come in. I'm assuming I automatically get evaluate the guy better than any of them. Now, I always evaluate a question mark or an attitude issue, something like that. I'd evaluate that guy.
So you delegated and trusted the people who were doing that.
I'm a pretty good delegator. Yeah, I definitely delegated across the board. Yeah, but I've been doing that for a while.
I know. Well,
yeah, 100%.
But I see that because as we've grown as a company where I work now, delegation is the hardest part. I mean, we've doubled, tripled our revenue in the last 10 years. But as you go from a small family company to a pretty large, delegation is a hard thing to do, to give up. And I know you were talking, Coach Osborne was a micromanager.
I'm sitting here thinking that right now. It's like he didn't delegate a lot. Defense, he delegated the defense to Charlie and his staff.
Did he delegate recruiting, or was he pretty hands-on in the recruiting?
Actually, recruiting, I think he really delegated that. I mean, I think he had a say in a lot of it. But I mean, that's kind of a hard one for me to speak to because I was in Nebraska. You're that home state kid. I'm on the offensive line. Well, I'm seeing these guys. I'm seeing Dan Young and Milt Tenneper all the time anyway because I'm going to football camps and I'm down on campus. My dad worked at UNL. So I'm down on campus all the time. So I'd see those guys all the time. So my recruiting experience at Nebraska is really skewed. I mean, it's not very accurate. My understanding, however, is that a lot of those coaches did all their own recruiting. They had a territory. You had guys who were really, really good, who were kind of closers and would kind of do a great job within specific regions. I mean, I think like Darlington handled California. Kevin Steele was sort of the southern United States. Jack Pierce had Louisiana and Texas, and it kind of went from there. But I mean, I think Osborne did delegate the recruiting, but when it came to the actual coaching, at least on the offensive side, Osborne, he was the play caller. He was the offensive coordinator. He was the quarterback's coach. He was the head guy. He kind of did everything. And I mean, that was something that I thought, for better or worse, I don't say this necessarily as a criticism. It was just how Osborne did it. But when he named Solich as his successor, I think it always sort of hamstrung Solich a little bit because the entire time I was in Lincoln, Solich was the assistant head coach. And I'm sitting there going like, I see the guy coaching running backs every day, and that's it.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's doing from an assistant head coach standpoint. Because Osborne's doing everything.
Well, if I remember correctly, David Sokol had to basically teach him how to be a CEO. I mean, he had David be a consultant there for a little bit, which was interesting. You know, your story's been told so many times. We told it the last time you were on here, but I never asked you this question the last time you were here, and that is, you were an extremely successful business person going into the coaching world. I'm not saying at Coastal, but were you treated like an outsider from peers? How did they treat you? How were you treated by
at Coastal?
Yeah, not you at Coastal, but the competition. Did other coaches treat you as an even peer, or were they like
No. I think the other coaches might have said, try to recruit against us. Might have said, "Okay, he's not a coach; he's a business guy." They may have said that, but no, not them. It was the people within the Coastal Carolina community and the neighborhood, not the neighborhood. I mean, the entire community that. They did like the guy before me. He got off to a great start. He had a very prominent figure in town. He's a good Southern guy that could tell a good story and loved being up on a billboard to represent somebody, someplace. He did very well his first 4 years. His last 5 years, he was 29 and 28. There's a soft schedule against the two best teams in the league. He was 1-9, and half of those were really, really bad beats. And his kids, APR, assuming it's the same. I think if he got to 925, like he was starting to give up scholarship, it was a real penalty. We were at 933. Guys were getting in trouble. They weren't graduating. All those things were happening. So if you look at that, I probably should have been fired maybe a year early. But it was not handled well. It was handled poorly. So I think the decision to let him go was probably made at the same time I said, I will come. But they didn't let him go then. So then the latest you let him go was like an hour after the last game. They let him go out on the road. So the coaches all felt, I remember everybody was liked. I think everybody thought, no, we probably need somebody else. But everybody was liked. They let him go out on the road, and they pull him back off the road, and that's when they fired him. And that became a mess. And this guy was the popular guy. The administration wasn't particularly popular. And then everybody's waiting, well, who are they going to bring in? Who are they going to bring in? They're going to bring in, like, Coach Osborne coming back from to coach. Or bring in? And they bring in this Joey Moglia guy from the Bronx coming down from Omaha, who's the Ameritrade guy. A lot of people didn't even even try to take a look. By the time I got there, I had 16 years, plus 2 years in Nebraska, but 1 year at the Omaha Night. That's 19 years I had been coaching. And I think as a head coach, maybe not as a linebacker coach, but my skills sets that you need as a head coach, I just think they were better than what they would have been because my experience as a pretty senior guy in the business world. But no, I wasn't. I was disliked, and I have proof of that.
So that amazes me because I would have thought there would have been other coaches within your league like, whatever, we got a business guy, we're not even going to give him the time of day. But you're saying it became worse from the.
Well, I was beating them. Once I started beating them, they started giving me the time of day.
How about athletic directors? Like when you speak at the athletic director, do you have their attention from that business standpoint?
The first time I did was about 4 or 5 years ago. I think that was the last time I did before the conference. And I was asked to speak on leadership. And I remember thinking this is going to be because I was still coaching. And my name would pop up for jobs, but I wouldn't necessarily get one. So I was sensitive to that. So when I began the talk, I said, look, I was the organization, the Global Summit group. The year before, they had me speak to the leaders of professional franchises, like the GMs, the presidents, et cetera. It was a big, big, big hit. Based on that, they asked me to speak to the ownership. That was a hit. So based on that, they asked me to speak to the athletic directors. And I really was hesitant. So when I got up on stage, I said something like that. I said, here's why they asked me here. And I said, I almost turned it down. Because I recognize my name pops up for other jobs. I recognize that. I said, so it may look like I'm here for an interview. I'm not here for an interview. I said, here's why I'm here. I respect all you in the room and your jobs and your leaders. I said, but I think I've got something that has separated me as a football coach and as a business guy and as an individual for the last 4 or 5 decades of my life. I just want to share with you what I think is my single most competitive advantage I've had in my entire personal and professional lifetime. That's what I want to share. I did that. I did a good job. I was well received. Jack Swarbrick asked me to come in and talk to his coaching staff at Notre Dame. I actually said, I think Notre Dame's going to have such big egos. I don't think they're going to say, who's this Coastal Carolina guy? I said, you should think that through. A week later, he said, I thought so. You're probably right. It's not going to make sense. But I was well respected for that. 4 years later, they said, we don't want you to talk about leadership. We want to get your perspective. Now I'm not coaching. I want to get your perspective, the real state of college athletics. But what threw a monkey wrench into that was NIL. This was at first you have their NIL, and I said, well, you want to? Here's what I think. You should break away from the NCAA. The NCAA is the worst possible thing that could happen. But you guys are smart. You got your plan. You got your deals. But you keep slowing down. You slow down because you talk about like what's it going to do to the tennis team. To the female tennis team. Then you talk about, are they students or are they employees? How are we going to figure that out? And we want to do that, but the lawyers tell us, no. I said, you've gone nowhere. I said, you treat it like a business. What you're missing is there's no sense of urgency. I said, I compliment everything you're saying, everything you're doing, zero sense of urgency. So right now you are a beautiful oil tanker in the middle of the ocean, big, beautiful, but kind of move slow. You're competing against 20 well-armed marine ships that are zipping all over the place around you, ahead of you, but they can take you down anytime they want to. I said, but you got to catch up. And if you don't, they said they'd come up with something in September, which they haven't. They said, you come up with something like 5 months from now, they're going to be that much further ahead of you. So you got to get a stick. And then I actually gave, here are my suggestions for what you could do to get this done. And,
want to be respectful of your time because we're about an hour and 11 minutes into this podcast, or we could talk all night. Would you ever want to be on the college football playoff committee? Because I think you've got I think you've got what it takes to be on that.
You know what? I've never even given that any thought, but I think that'd be something. I don't want to do anything that I don't love doing that I'd be good at, that I enjoy doing. No, I think that might be something that never come up, but I think I think so. I think so.
I mean, it's a unique perspective just from a business standpoint. I think from an analytical standpoint. Now, we brought it up, and it's been. I would like to see it still is that you need a professional handicapper. You need an odds maker on there because I do think they offer a completely different perspective. Spreitzer brought it up on you weren't.
Yeah, no,
you weren't so against it.
No, honestly, it oddly makes sense to me.
It does. Just from a power rankings to it.
Yeah.
I mean, legalized gambling is becoming more and more popular. You can't ignore it. It's over every NFL stadium.
Yeah,
it's everywhere.
It is, but when you look at the evaluation that they're doing of the teams, and I'm talking about Vegas right now. I'm talking about the handicappers. When you look at their evaluations, I mean, the smart ones, the good ones, there's just, I mean, it's almost cold how little emotion goes in.
Zero.
And I think that's something that you need. I mean, that's kind of the reason I like the idea of it for the college football playoffs is because you remove that emotion from it. And I think that's important when you're selecting these teams.
Joe, I tell you what, it's always a fascinating conversation with you. You do interviews with some of the biggest people in television. I see on Fox Business. I see on CNBC, all that stuff. You have more fun doing ours, though, don't you?
This is the most, I don't even consider it. I consider myself sitting down with two buddies. We have like-minded approaches to life, and we just sit down and chat. This, if it is an interview, this is my most favorite interview.
Okay, hey, final question I got for it, because I actually wore one of my old Giants.
I see that. I see that.
You're a New York guy.
Yep.
Giants or Jets?
Oh, Giants. Ask me about baseball. Ask me about baseball.
You better be a
Then
Yankees fan.
Yankees. I mean, why? I'm insulted. You'd even ask me
There's
that
no
question.
Giants guy that doesn't like the Yankees. It's Jets and Mets, Giants and
That's
Yankees.
fair.
Rangers or Islanders?
Rangers.
Yeah, Rangers or if you're a Giants or Yankees fan, you like the
Well, you're just sticking with Manhattan.
Yeah.
You know, you got Long Island. You got then you left out hockey. No, you just have your hockey. You left out basketball.
Well, I would assume the Knicks because the Nets, when you're growing up, were in New Jersey, right? I mean, that's
Knicks.
Heck, the Nets were New Jersey when I was
yeah,
there.
yeah. That's the Brooklyn thing's only a new thing.
Yeah, that's a few years ago.
Yeah.
That's not that long.
So,
Well, how about the Inwood Rams and the Bronx Bombers? Well,
the Inwood Rams.
yeah, that was my local neighborhood football
really?
team.
Okay.
I was in 8th grade.
I
I
like
thought
it.
the Bronx Bombers
I like
were the
it.
Yankees.
Actually, part of the semi-professional team that the Yankees used to sponsor were the Bronx Bombers.
No way.
When I was 19, I played not in the Bronx Bombers, but in that league that against the Bronx Bombers. And but the Bronx Bombers be the Yankees. You know what? I hesitated, and in front of you two guys that are so quick-minded, I thought if 2 seconds goes by, they're going to ignore me. So I just threw out the Bronx Bombers. I couldn't think of another name.
You know, you may or may not remember this because I remember your personal assistant got a hold of us when you were going in I think it was the Hall of Fame at Coastal. She invited us, or she said you invited us down there, and we couldn't make it, but we were very.
I did invite you.
Yeah, we were very touched and honored that you'd even think of asking us to come down.
I was in the.
You were down in Florida. You were at the Florida State Clemson game,
Yeah.
and I had to stay here with my daughter because my wife was down in New Orleans. So
Our oldest daughter goes to Florida State, so we were down there visiting.
yeah.
So on the way down there, you could have stopped at Myrtle Beach,
We should have.
got to my thing, and then go ahead.
Yeah, Myrtle Beach. What a tough place to live. Hey, you're a golfer, right?
Yeah.
What do you think of this live thing? I'm a big live golf guy.
You mean the whole thing in Asia?
Yeah. Well, no, the
Middle East,
Greg Norman's
NIL of
thing.
golf?
Yeah. The Middle Eastern golf,
Yeah,
the other league,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Again, go back to business. It's competition. So like the PGA's gotten away with whatever they've been for like a decade after decade after decade. They're a monopoly. So somebody else says, we'd like to have a league. Now, when we've done that with the USFL or the CFL or the XFL or the UFL with the Nighthawks, et cetera, it was run poorly. Well, these guys got a lot of money thrown at it. Now, by the way, originally the first year of the UFL, they were throwing a ton of money at it. That's why they went out of business the third year.
Quickly.
So they better know what they're doing. But I think they got a lot of money. But the reality is, it's business, it's life. Kind of like, look at all the revenue coming from TV.
Yep.
It's at some point, do you not think the player's going to get some of that? So control how they get it rather than make believe it's not going to happen.
Great stuff. Joe Moglia, thank you for stopping. And again, open invitation whenever you're in Omaha.
Thank you, guys.
You can stop by here. Of course, the Doc Talk podcast is presented by BetFred Sports. Download the BetFred Sports app today on the Apple and Google Play stores. If you are in Iowa, Arizona, or Colorado, and you open up a brand new account, use the promo code DocTalk and get a $20 free bet. Again, BetFred Sports, the official presenting sponsor of the Doc Talk podcast. If you're looking to head out to Memorial Stadium to watch the Huskers take on Wisconsin, be sure to check out my friends at Ticket for Less. Ticket for Less, known for a generation as Ticket Express, has the best selection of tickets for all your favorite events, including Nebraska. Head over to ticketsforless.com now and save on your next order when you use the promo code DocTalk at checkout. That again is DocTalk at ticketsforless.com. Big thanks to our good buddy Scotty Strunk over at Husker Hounds, 2 locations in the Omaha area. The big superstore over there at 84th and Center. You need Husker gear, go see Husker Hounds. And Connor Orr with Orr, Horrigan, and Flinty. He's our NIL lawyer and specialist. If you need a litigator, go to ohlflaw.com. For Joe Moglia, for Dr. Rob Zadisk, I'm Travis Justice. We'll talk to you next time on the Doc Talk podcast presented by BetFred Sports.